Hogan. We're the Man Cave Classroom, and we're doing this in A10. And this is usually where we start off the beginning of any type of social studies class. Is that how do we have the ability to teach it, and what is history, and how do we know everything from the past? And it really comes down to primary and secondary sources and artifacts.
Or asking Mr. Coletti.
Or Master Mr.
Because he was at most of the things.
Yes, one of the oldest guys. So when we're looking at it, when we're looking at today, if you're going to go and study 2021, and if you're going to go and look at 2021, 50, 60 years down the road, there's so much we have. We have TV, you have newspapers, you have magazines, you have social media, you have computer. If there's anything that happened today, significant, wouldn't be too hard to find out about it. Dozens of newspapers, everything. You go back 1600s, 1700s, even earlier than that, it's very difficult. Do you have paper? Yeah, in certain instances. Is everything well documented? Not exactly.
Or in some cases, if you want to go back really long ago, maybe that language is dead.
Yes.
Maybe they wrote it down, but they have no idea what that language translates into today with like the Egyptian hieroglyphics.
Yep.
Thanks to something called the Rosetta Stone.
Yep.
We were able to translate hieroglyphics and learn so much about the Egyptians. It's all about learning from the past. How do we gather all of this knowledge that we have as brilliant social studies teachers?
Yes. I mean, when you're looking at textbooks, you have social studies textbooks. They cannot write them without primary and secondary sources, particularly primary sources from the past. So let's break down what a primary source is. First-hand information, right? These are people that were there.
Mm-hmm.
If we,
in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
If my great uncle was killed in World War II, his letters home, primary sources. Any photograph taken, primary source. It was physically there as the event was taking place, or in some way, shape, or form, witnessing the event live. And we watch 9/11 unfold on TV. We are primary sources. Now, are we as reliable of a primary source as somebody who's standing on the street corner looking up at those buildings? Certainly not. Won't be able to tell you the smell, the sound, the taste of the smoke in your mouth or dust in your mouth.
But and that's another thing you're bringing up. When you're looking at sources, you have to determine whether or not they're reliable. There's other things that you're going to get into as we move along throughout the year. There's bias, there's perspective. Authenticity. I mean, if we were to get into a fight, all right, God forbid, and now all of a sudden we have to explain our version of it. He's going to be the bad guy. I'm going to be the good guy.
No!
I started it, and that's how it's going to go. That's how it's going to go. And then, of course, what do you have to do? You got to look at witnesses who were there. So it's just when you're looking at primary sources, these are people who are there. So some examples. We didn't get to that just yet. We'll look at the secondary source, and then we'll look at the different types of examples. Secondhand information of a person or event. They were not there.
Wasn't there.
Somebody who heard.
Secondary sources get their information from primary sources. There's actually a tertiary source, third-hand knowledge. We're not even going to get into that.
No, we're not.
We're keeping this real Barney style.
Yep.
Primary, it was there. Secondary, it wasn't there.
Is it possible that you know this story or heard this story from somebody's there? Yeah, absolutely. You're not a primary source, though.
Yeah.
You were not there. So
but my friend told me that Mr. Heek started it. Sorry.
Now you're relying on whether or not how reliable your friend is when you're talking about that.
Yeah.
The
Dead Sea Scroll.
Wow.
Yeah.
Definitely a primary source.
Definitely a primary source. This dates back 2,000 years ago to the time of Christ. In what is now Israel, and uncovering these artifacts. Artifacts are any man-made object from the past. That is a primary source. It might not be able to talk to you.
No.
It might not be able to give you a lot of information, but a musket ball from the American Revolution, that's a primary source. It was there. It can tell us a lot about how the war was fought.
If you know how to read it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other thing, too. Now you have a different language. Some of it's missing. And here's the other thing you're going to have to do in social studies quite often. When you're looking at primary sources, when you're looking at secondary sources, and then you're putting in an artifact, you yourself are going to have to draw a conclusion based on that. You would have to put some pieces together here and look at other documents that you could find that might go along with it to kind of corroborate your story or prove your theory. But here we go. Another one, primary source. Hand drawn by someone on parchment with territories colored red, green, and yellow. Wow.
Colonial America. I can tell that's Long Island.
Yep.
You
Hand drawn.
Cape Cod.
Hand drawn.
Yeah.
Now, I got to say, this is art. I mean, people wouldn't characterize it as art. Of course, you have
Cartography being art? I
Yeah,
get it.
I would say it's an art form. without a doubt.
Cartography, the art of making maps.
Sure.
Look it up.
And of course, you had people who were hand drawing money at certain points too, especially
Yep.
the ones who were going to count. I mean, definitely an art form. Again, primary source. Let's see, secondary or primary? All right, hopefully by now you're looking at this textbook and going, that's definitely a secondary source.
Yeah. Textbooks get their information from primary
primary
sources.
sources.
If you look in the back of your textbook, it lists all of its sources, all of its sites.
Sure. Primary sources?
Newspapers are interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's consider-
newspapers are very interesting because they can actually be both.
Yes.
If I'm reading a newspaper in America on December 8th, 1941, about the attack on Pearl Harbor, certainly going to be a primary source. But if I'm reading a newspaper today that has an editorial about Pearl Harbor in it, that's probably going to be a secondary source because there's not too many people around left today who witnessed the attack. So newspapers are very, very tricky.
Newspapers also tricky. It really is going to determine what kind of information you're trying to extract out of it as
Yeah.
well. If you want, going back to December 8th, 1941, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, you're going to want, what was the response the next day?
Yeah.
What was the immediate responses? I mean, of course.
How did we feel?
How did we feel? And then, if you're going to revisit that and look at that to write a paper on it, 50, 60 years later, and you're looking at more current ones, you'll see how information has changed, particularly statistics. December 8th, 1941, they're going to mention they have, I don't know, thousands either missing or dead, and they're not going to have a hard number on that.
And now we know the
Years and
exact
years later,
number.
yeah, you're going to. So that's something that's...
Which brings you up to ever-changing history.
Yes.
How our own knowledge of history is constantly changing as a result of new sources being uncovered. When we were in school, the first humans got here by the land bridge.
Yep.
Like that's how they got here. It was indisputable. But now we've actually started to uncover, archaeologists have started to uncover a theory that they came across like not rowboats, but like canoes along the coast up Asia to Alaska, down Canada to California. So there are two different theories as to how we got here now. We're always changing history.
And those theories, you're only going to come up with those theories when you're looking at primary sources and when you're looking at artifacts. You need evidence.
Secondary,
Encyclopedias.
just like a textbook.
Yep, pretty
Just like
much.
a textbook.
It's just alphabetized. Now, when you're looking at, these are pretty much, when you're looking at basic social studies, these are what historians are going to use to kind of piece together things and talk about the past or write about the past.
Primary, it was there.
Secondary?
Photographs, videos, eyewitnesses, journals, diaries, letters written at the time, you name it. Secondary, wasn't there.
Wasn't there?
Wasn't
Textbooks.
there. Wasn't me.
Textbooks, biographies.
Yep.
Primary sources, autobiographies. All right, we're good here? Thanks for watching.